Entrepreneurs, side hustlers, and startups everywhere. We've got an amazing guest for you today on the Seven Figures Club podcast. If you're looking to build a team, a culture, and have the kind of staff that leads to massive success and growth with your business, then you're going to want to pay attention to today's guest. Today's guest is my good friend, Robb Lifferth. And Robb hails from Utah. He's been in the tech space for a number of years. He's an HR genius. He started out his career as an HR director at Fusion.io, which was eventually became a unicorn billion-dollar company. We're going to talk to him about the journey and the integral role that he played and everything he learned in working there for 5 years and building that company up. He's had some other amazing experiences at different organizations, including he was Executive VP of Human Resources at Upwell Health. He also has consulted for Mountain Talent, and currently, after he was VP, actually he still is VP of Human Capital at Alta Global Ventures. He co-founded Tech Buzz News, which is a big news source here in Silicon Slopes, Utah. He's also the co-founder and owner of ISO Talent, which is an incredible tech company that focuses in on staff and team and really placing the right professionals in your organization so that you can build the type of business that you want, because as Jim Collins would say in the book From Good to Great, it's getting the right people on the bus that matters. Robb, welcome to the show.
There are over 32 million businesses in the US, and over 90% of them will never break seven figures in annual sales. So how do we as entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs break into that seven figures club? This podcast will relentlessly share the secrets, strategies, and tactics I've used to create 3 multi-seven figures businesses and bring in even more successful entrepreneurs than me to share their inspirational stories and tactics to success. You can create your dream business and life right now. So buckle up and let's go.
Thanks, Leo. It's good to see you again. Nice to catch up. Excited to be here.
Yeah, no. So let's start with your background a little bit. What were some of the key events that led you towards the tech space, number one? And number two, was it always kind of your goal to eventually, start your own business, your own startup, your own tech company? Or what were some of the steps that kind of led you down that path?
Yeah, so I've always been drawn to tech. I have my first degree is actually in information systems, and that was kind of my first foray out of college. I have a second degree in human resources that I got as well. And so I just always have loved tech. As far as starting a company, no, I actually didn't I went out of my way when I started my career. I never wanted to be an entrepreneur. I went out of my way, I'll never do that. My dad wasn't, he founded his own company, went through his whole life as that, and he had a very successful exit at the end. And I remember growing up, the funny thing about startups and starting your own company, there's that little dash between the start and the end. When you say you've been there that long, you have the ups and the downs. I remember watching, like, man, that grind is real, and it wasn't. Oh, yeah. I wasn't all that excited about it, but I was excited about. I like the idea of building stuff from scratch. And so, when we jumped into, I was really drawn to the idea of startups. I just didn't want to start my own for a long time until I had I ran into an idea that we had to put, take a run on. So when I came out of college and, I wanted to jump into tech, and Fusion was had a couple smaller roles, straight out of college for a couple of years. And I got a tap on my shoulder from an old professor of mine. I said, "Hey, I got this lead. You should really consider it." And I was like 8 months into my current role, and I'm like, "Oh, I just landed this thing." But I took the phone call, and as it goes, I jumped on. That was a wild ride. So it's been, and I've never looked back. Once I got it, like that taste, I could not be in startups.
So when you started there at Fusion in 2009, how big was the company? And, obviously a big part of a startup is getting the right people on the bus, recruiting the right team. What was that process like as you started out there in 2009?
Yeah, so there was about, I think there was 75 people at the company at the time that I came on. And that was September-ish of 2009, November 2009. And it was me and there was two other people in that HR group. And our task was to grow it as fast as we can. We just closed a round of funding. We had a lot of money. We had a really innovative idea that was taking off the market. And so we had to expand across the globe. And so that was my first, really, we opened up 22 countries, and we were hiring on every continent and in every position imaginable on the most wild, really specific technical things that we had to find, both in software, hardware, down to the kernel level. It was a really, really tough technical solution, not only to solve the challenge that Fusion AI was solving, but to find the people that could do it. And so we were, I still have, there's some people I still feel guilty. I pulled a guy out of his PhD out of Yale, to go, he made a bunch. But you do these things because you just had to take advantage of the opportunity that was in front of us. It was amazing. So we grew from 2009 to when we exited from SanDisk, which was 2014-ish. I think that's right. Summer 2014. There was 1,000 people, right? And so it was just this wild exponential growth of people that were coming in. When we went public, I think we went public around 600 people, which was about 2 years later. We went public in June of 2011. So we were just stacking them in as fast as we possibly could. We put about 250 engineers in there in that time. So it was awesome.
Wow, unbelievable. So you went from 75 headcount all the way up to 1,000. And as the HR director, a big part of that was you trying to find, and your team's finding the right people, and you're having to hire across 22 countries. Is that what you said?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we hired from 22 countries. We did it all from the United States. And so it was an interesting challenge. So we had, we brought in some really, really talented engineers, recruiters that helped us do that. Just some absolute amazing people. David Hollingshouse, Joe St. Ledger. These guys were just legends in their own world that could go and find these talents across the world and build out an amazing sales team and technical team. And then we had some other engineers that came in and helped us, recruiters that helped on the engineering side as well as we started to expand. So obviously didn't do it alone. But it was one of those things that I think in the 5 years that I was there, my role split 7 different times. I did everything under the sun in HR, just because, you just do what you have to do. A lot of late nights and early mornings, and it was a ton of fun.
Exactly right, and grew that, and then so you guys IPO'd a couple of years later in 2011, and then from there continue to grow, and eventually were purchased by SanDisk, which anybody who knows anything about the tech space knows that that's a huge tech conglomerate that makes a lot of things happen. And so for them to pick you guys up, obviously they saw that this was going to be a great fit for everything that they were doing. And so you had that incredible success, that ride. And then what were some of the next steps throughout your career? And before you get to that, what were some of your takeaways of building a business that fast growing? You guys basically 12x'd your headcount in about 5 years, which that's not typical. That's very irregular. What were some of your takeaways as you moved from that organization to your next opportunity?
Yeah, it's interesting when you're and we had a lot of press. We were doing some pretty innovative stuff. All of Apple, all of Facebook. Facebook was brand new at the time. Their entire back-end infrastructure was sitting on our stuff. So we were getting a lot of press. And so with that, I was getting recruiting calls all the time. Hey, come be our next, I wasn't the head of HR. I had 3 different leaders in front of me that were over my time there that I was learning a lot from, right? So I kept getting these calls hey, come run your own show, come run our HR department, at this next startup. And I said no a lot, which was one of my big takeaways from it. And the reason why was that, one, Fusion AI was really hard to recreate, right? And that's, looking in my, my career at this point, it's really hard to recreate that kind of success. but I was still learning a lot from these leaders, world-class leaders, like, Kay Tolomeo, David Winley. David was the CHRO at Yahoo before Fusion. So just like crazy talent, right? And before I took that next step, because that was my ultimate goal for my career perspective, I just wanted to make sure that I was ready, because once I didn't want to go up there and stub my toe, and then that's really a good way to like set your career back. And so patience was hard, because they were throwing a lot of money at me, a lot of different options, and you just have to wait. And so I just wanted to make sure that I was ready for that, and waiting for the right opportunity.
In the last couple of years, there's been, obviously a lot of different things happening in the job market. And I think a couple of years ago, a lot of people, maybe made that decision and they jumped and they took the extra money, or they took this. And then, now things have kind of changed a little bit, and employers are looking back. And how important do you think it is where so many people jump ship so fast nowadays to be able to stay in one place and stay loyal to a company and a firm that gives you an amazing opportunity? How important is it for people to consider that as they're going through their careers? Because a lot of people will just take the extra money and run, and that's not always the right decision. It sounds like the decision you made to stay ended up being one that you were pretty grateful you made that decision.
Yeah, I'm glad I made the decision. There's a value exchange that I think you have to be honest about it. So I think the greatest issue in people when they're managing their career is they don't appreciate the value exchange that's happening. And so my business partner Paul Ostrom says the definition of a good employee and a bad employee is the same, where the value exchange of the employees that is above what you're being compensated, right? And so the way to offset that is through equity. And so that way, when an employee is creating more value for the company, they're being compensated through their equity that they've been given. I'm a firm believer in that. And so, but without equity, then it really becomes really messed up. And so you can get pretty disenfranchised pretty quick. For me, I was learning a lot, and I was still young, and I think employees jump too early these days. And there's a lot to be said. Like getting into the loyalty between companies and employees, I don't think that we've gotten to. It's not like my parents' generations where you stay at a company for 40 years anymore. I think it's healthy for employees to move on at some point, but I think it's happening way too early. Like right now, the average tenure for an employee is 2.3 years. I think 5 years is healthy. 4 or 5 years, you get into the spot where you've learned what you've learned. It's time to go and maybe learn for something else. And employers should celebrate it if it's done in the right mark, and employees should be, there should be a mutual respect when you leave, if it's done correctly.
And you made a huge point there, because a lot of people will think, oh, I'm going to go work for the established company. I don't want to work for the uncertain startup. And yet that established company is probably not going to have that opportunity where you can earn some equity shares by delivering a lot of value. And when you can jump on a startup that has that type of opportunity, and those equity shares can take somebody who's number 50, number 100 in an organization, and really have an amazing exit at some point that you're just not going to have the opportunity elsewhere. And so I think that's an important value bomb that everybody listening today should take away, is startups aren't for everybody, but for those who are driven, can put in the extra time, deliver more value, and help that company get the result, there is an amazing reward at the end when you actually put that in.
Yeah, it's interesting. So Fusion.io, when we went public in 2011, I think it was June 2011, and there was over 40 employees outside of the executive staff. So outside of the C-suite, 40 employees were made millionaires who were not millionaires the day before. And so, and it was a real testament. The founders were really great about being very, very generous. That was the day one strategy that they made, was that they were generous with their equity. If I'm going to make it, we're all going to make it, was the mindset. And it set, if you go back and look at the alumni of Fusion, I mean, there's that tree of success has been broadened by that. And it leaves a legacy to those founders that helped establish these guys from a personal perspective. They go out and start their own thing. So that was, it was great.
It's awesome. I would kind of describe it at that point almost as like, you guys, well, Fusion won the Super Bowl there. You guys were all Super Bowl champions, and for the rest of your life, you're going to remember that team and that experience, and that's just awesome. So you got there, and then next, you started looking at additional opportunities, and then your next step was you went to Upwell Health there, and served as executive VP of human resources there. So it sounds like at that point, you took on a greater leadership role. What were some of the challenges as, became a new leader executive in that firm?
Yeah, I came in. So that was, it was another, Fusion was a Mercado company. Upwell, previously known as Alliance Health, was another portfolio company. And they brought me over and said, hey, once come take a leadership role. And it was my first, hey, you're the leader, let's go run it. It had a lot of momentum, and it was going really, really well for a long time. We grew from 400 employees to almost about 1,000, about 80 million in revenue to about 200 million in revenue at its high watermark. We really, really, really nice growth. We ran into some issues in the marketplace, and it was one of those success stories, and it when all that flamed out, right? And so it was a high flyer. We did everything right from a growth perspective and putting in the right training that established back to its revenue. And if you don't get everything, all your T's and C's and everything buttoned up, it can unbutton a company, and it certainly did in this standpoint. So it's a lot of learning that happened there. That was a big bummer, because that one had from a potential perspective was going a lot faster and could have been a lot bigger than Fusion was. But you got to keep innovating, keep everyone, keep it all clean. So.
And so, things don't always go well in business. As Mark Cuban says, you only have to be right in business once. But every successful, business professional at some point is going to be faced with massive adversity. And so as you faced that type of adversity and building that and seeing the growth, and then at some point you guys just kind of hit a wall with that. How did you get back on track and push through that adversity? Because, I remember when I went through, a lot of adversity during the 08-09 recession. Business I started had done well and then didn't do as well during the recession. Investments I had made didn't go as well. In fact, they went horribly for me during the recession. And getting back on track really took me a lot longer time than it should have. How were you able to get back on track quickly and not take that failure quite so personally, but just use it as a learning experience? Because every successful entrepreneur and business professional at some point in their career is going to be faced with that, if not multiple times.
Yeah. So when I left Alliance or Upwell, I went out and I just started consulting, and honestly, consulting was like me going through like, hey, what do I want to do when I grow up, kind of thing. And so yeah, I was helping companies out and figuring it out, and I got a call from my now business partner Paul Alstrom, and said, hey, look, come into our portfolio, take a look, come help our fund, our portfolio companies, and that's when I joined as head of HR for the fund, after I'd been looking for kind of consulting for a year and figuring things out. And what it was, to answer your question, I had to figure out that what made me successful back in my other roles, right? And so it was surrounding myself with good people, betting on myself, right? Knowing what I'm good at, knowing my holes, my weaknesses, right? And being painfully self-aware of those weaknesses, because you're not good at everything, right? That that's and that's the disillusionment that I think a lot of hyper successful people will fall into, is they think that they have just the Midas touch on everything, and that's not always the case. And so if you can identify your weak spots, and surround yourself to complement those weak spots, that's what we did. And so as I came into Alta Ventures, we started looking at the needs of what the portcos needed there, the portfolio companies needed. And a lot of it was like they were series seed and series A companies, and they all had talent issues, right? Couldn't find talent, couldn't recruit it fast enough, didn't have the know-how, whatever. And so we started working on solutions, and the first solution we worked on was bringing engineers up from Mexico. We found a visa that we could literally make an offer, and I can get them sitting in from Mexico to Utah in less than 2 weeks, which is,
wow,
from a visa perspective is like, I mean, the H-1B still to this day, if I were trying to do that on an H-1B, it's like a 7-year process. So like to do it in two weeks is just unheard of. And we can still do that today. We didn't obviously invent that, but like we just really streamlined that process. So finding talent anywhere and then recruiting it up, turns out people were really, really interested in it. But then I got, as an HR professional, I hated the recruiting process, like the contingency model. Like, one of the things about HR is that we notoriously have the lowest budget. And so when someone comes in with a contingency fee and said, hey, here's 25% you go pay 25% of the fee because they have a special database. But that's like the biggest lie in all recruiting is someone has a special database. They're all looking on LinkedIn and then bringing them in. And so it just, I knew that there was a better way. And so we started working on an hourly solution it ended up cutting 40 to 80% of the costs out of the recruiting process. And so, for example, we can bring a controller into a company instead of it costing a company $30,000. We can bring it in for, usually about $7,500. And when we started introducing that into our portfolio companies, it was within a matter of months that we were completely inundated and like all of a sudden like hiring our recruiters as fast as we can because we were growing out of our shoes.
So basically what you discovered there, so your next opportunity there, you jump to this VC firm. And if you guys have not heard of Paul Ahlstrom, AHLSTROM, a phenomenal entrepreneur who has done incredible things in the tech world over the last several decades. And so he's running this venture capital firm. You come in to help out with the HR, and basically you discover a way to disrupt how the HR recruiting space is working, and you make it more efficient. And when things become more efficient, generally they become more affordable. And it sounds like that's exactly what you guys began to discover as you're implementing these engineers and these professionals that these growth venture-backed firms need in order to take the next step. And so then at that point, now you've got a formula. What was the next decision or step that you guys decided to do at that point?
So ironically, I'm sitting inside of, my day job is in helping portcos at Alta Scout or Alta Ventures. The original company is called Alta Scout, and that was our day job. And so I was doing the recruiting on the side as a side hustle. Paul helped. We'd set it up as a partnership. Paul made the decision to not do his next fund at Alta Ventures, and so he was finishing out his current fund, and then he's like, okay, what are we going to do? And so we set this up and we bootstrapped it. Like we made the decision, hey, if we're going to do this right, sometimes the problem with bringing on VC money, don't get me wrong, there is a time for it, if that's what you want to do. But when you bootstrap it, you get to truth real fast, right? Is this going to work? It's not going to work, right? Can I pay my next month's bills? Whatever. There's no time for fluff. And we got to, that first year we inked out a small profit. We made about, I can't remember, it was $250,000, which is great. Fed a couple of us, and that was good. COVID hit right at that same time, right after it. And I'm like, oh man. And I'll never remember the day that Rudy Gobert got COVID, right? And that was announced, Rudy Gobert equals COVID for me. Sorry, Rudy. But we lost 80% of our customers in 3 hours. It was just a horrible day, right? And I'm like, dang it. And I remember I had a fractional CFO. He's still my guy now, and he's like, "That's too bad, Rob. You had a pretty good thing going on there for a while." And and we laugh about that now. when all this dust settled, about 6 weeks later, all my customers came back, and we grew 4x that year bootstrap. So we went from 250 to $1 million in basically, and honestly, it was like 8 months. Like it was just a rocket ship. Because everyone had fired the recruiters, they're looking for alternatives, and the market picked up heavily. And it was at that point we're like, okay, we got something here. And so we picked up some VC, developed our platform, and haven't looked back. It's been great. And we've doubled or tripled and doubled every year since. And so it's been an awesome experience. The thing that I loved about I shouldn't say love it. The upside of COVID was COVID made us look and say, okay, look, this is the hand we're dealt. What are we going to do with it? And so you can either, it's one of those times where you kind of figure out who you are personally. 100%. We can either roll over or you just, you roll with it. And so one of the silver linings that we found in COVID is that as everyone went remote, all of a sudden nobody cared where people lived. And so we jumped on that opportunity. And so we started hiring people in Mexico instead of bringing them up, developers up from Mexico. We just leave them there. And our clients love that. Yeah. And so we were able to bring, and now we're at 150 countries. If you have a country you need to go into, we can employ them there and help them out. And we've expanded from just technical support to there's nothing that we can't hire. And so we hire, we do a lot of engineering. We do a lot of foreign accounting, which has been awesome. You see a lot of customer service. Like the basic rule of thumb is if they don't need to be in physical, distance to a customer or a product to ship it or touch it, like do it remote, and you can save a lot of money. And what we're finding is like in these countries where you and I met in Chile, right? Like amazingly intelligent people in every country across the world. It's just a matter of like getting access to that talent. And in the United States, we're all facing it. There's a wild talent shortage. And so you have to be creative to fill your needs. Like you have to, otherwise your business will die. And if it doesn't die, it will never reach its maximum potential. And that's, to me, as an entrepreneur, everyone has their own motivations. My biggest motivation and maybe the thing that scares me the most is not meeting my max. Like I will look back at my life and feel like I wasted it if I don't meet what I consider my maximum potential, right? For me or my business. And so that's been our goal. And finding this international stream of talent's been amazing. And it's been fun to watch our little help to help our clients go and meet their potential and watch them, have exits and, go through the fun things that they're going through and think that we had, a minor part of being to that. Like, it really is funny the way that we look at our talent, our clients now is like, it's like watching your siblings, your kids grow up, like you're just stoked for their success. Right. And so any hand we can have in part of that is great.
And a lot of value bombs, everyone, that Rob just dropped for you there. And if I was going to start to unpack those, I'd start with when you are dealt with this massive curveball that none of us could have anticipated coming, like COVID. There were two types of entrepreneurs and business owners that came out of COVID. Type 1 really struggled, didn't pivot, didn't make changes, tried to do things the same way, and they really struggled, and some of them went out of business, and a lot of them struggled and have continued to struggle this day. And then the other type said, I see that things are changing, so now I'm going to think outside the box. And so what you guys did was you said, well, hey, we don't have to bring them in. They can stay in their country. They can still work remotely. They can still be super productive with all these technology and tools. And then you started to disrupt the entire industry, and growth happened every single year after that. For us, we dealt with something similar where 60% of our business came from live events across the country. Those live events all went away. And so we had to pivot and go to virtual events. And we did that 3 months later. And then every month after that, we struggled for about 3 months. And then month 4, 5, 6, every month was growth after that. And year after year, making those types of pivots. And you have to think outside the box. And if you haven't gone through the adversity and struggles that you did earlier in your career, then you aren't as comfortable, but you learn from that. You're like, I'm going to pivot, change here, and we're going to find a solution. And now you guys have grown exponentially since then. So just a great lesson in how you deal with adversity and with unexpected change.
Yeah, it was, My time at Alliance Health, it was pretty. It got pretty rough there, right? When you go from 200 million to not 200 million, right? Basically down to zero. Like, those times are pretty rough, right? And so I kept saying to myself when I was in the middle of this, the COVID stuff, I'm like, well, it's never gonna get worse than that, right? So like that was always my mantra, and it never did, right? It's like you just figured out a way, and it was great. And so we just stayed scrappy and found a solution. And that's the startup way. That's what I like about it, right? If it doesn't work, you go find something else and you pivot, and you pivot fast, right? Fail fast is it's in 1,000 different, startup books that I've read. And it is the greatest advice on the planet, right? Fail fast.
Yeah. What doesn't work? What does work? Find what works. And, for a lot of startups, obviously in the last 18 months, we've seen a lot of change with venture capital firms and the way that they work. And so whereas there was easier money in 2020, 2021, and before that, where you could get that seed round, that next juice of capital to grow, what did you find out? Because you guys did it differently. You bootstrapped for quite a while and then kind of earned that round of venture capital when it started to make sense. And I think a lot of founders are now going through that, and they're going to have to find a way. So as they are forced to bootstrap, what were some of the keys to success early on as you guys bootstrapped?
Yeah, we were making several $1 million at the time we took our first round of funding, right? So like,
yeah.
And when we took the round of funding, there was definitely not as easy to find, funding. We did have a bit of a cheat code with Paul, having been in the VC world. He had great contacts. So we didn't go through the same process that others did, but it's because he had that experience and knew what they were looking for. And said, hey, look, times are going to be tight here. Cash, the ability to make cash will be king on this. And so going in there and having a proven model, it helped. It was the difference, right? And we got with some great VC firms, and we did a nice mix of really good seasoned investors. We were one of Sweater Capital's very first VC Capital's very first checks that they wrote. If you're not familiar with them, they have a model similar to Robinhood in the VC world. So if you want access to VC capital or VC investments, you can go through Sweater, and they've been amazing people. We've had a family office in Crocker Venture, and they have been just some of the most supportive investors on the planet. And then Rob McMillan with Ad Ventures has been an awesome just investor to kind of help bring me along personally, right? This is my first VC as an entrepreneur, and Paul's he's been on both sides of it and had exits on both sides of the house. This is my first deal. And so these guys have been really kind and patient with me to bring me along. And so that's one of the things that I would tell, anyone that would want to go into that world. Not all checks are created equal, right? Money, like sometimes a check is just a check, and that's okay, right? I personally was looking for something a little bit more. And so, for example, with Sweater Capital, Sweater VC, Cash Allred is been our point person there, and he's been awesome to deal with, right? Like, hey, when I get stuck on an issue, I'll call Cash up and be like, hey, what do you think here? And to be able to bounce ideas off of him, I've done the same thing with Rob McMillan, and it's just know for all intents and purposes, these are now your new business partners. So know who you're getting in business with. I've seen a lot of these things go, having been in this world for a long time, I've seen a lot of these things go the wrong way. And so when we took money, we weren't going to take it from anyone, right? It was really important for us to take it from the right people.
Completely agree with that. And one of the important factors I think that you've got to consider is, does this organization share my values and principles? And do they have a roadmap for success? Have they been able to, take other similar founders and organizations from A to Z, from a seed round to an exit, and really provide support and value, and maybe even introductions of strategic partners? Like, those things matter. And a lot of the times, the founder or the group might just be looking for the check. And you're exactly right. All checks are not created equal, and that's super important. So for everybody listening, thinking, wow, I'd love to have some assistance kind of building my team and staff. Tell us a little bit about your firm, ISO Talent, and specifically some of the problems that ISO Talent solves in terms of getting the right fit of people and staff with your business.
Yeah, so one of the things that we look at when we built this out was we wanted to make sure that we could help people. We're not looking to just put somebody in an open role for you. That's not what success is defined at. Success for your company is defined in retention and finding the right role. So if we did our job correctly, that person better dang well be sitting in that seat at least a year from now, right? And so, and then also, like, if you don't like us, I don't want you to sit on some contract that where like you have to wait 30 days or 90 days to fire me. Like, I'm going to stand on my quality. If you hate me, fire me tomorrow, right? And like, all of our, that's how our contracts are. They've been that way since day one, and they'll be like that way as long as I'm here. And so those are principles that are really dear to us. And so when we go in and we're helping people find talent in your companies, we act as if it was our company, that we're inside, that these are going to be our coworkers, right? We're putting our name on it, and we want to make the right decisions with you to get the talent in there to help you meet your business needs in a price that's like not ridiculous. And so I challenge you to find anyone there. I've yet to find anyone that's less expensive than us, and I can show you the data. No one can do it. Our data, we are statistically speaking, we stack up better than anyone I've ever seen on the market. And I'll show anyone the data wants to challenge. So everyone, we can hire somebody in less. It's typically 30 days or less, and the price point is fantastic. And there's not the only thing. As we built out and we started getting the need, we were building a marketplace, and so we actually have recruiters come from in all different talents and specialties. And so the only thing that we don't hire at this point right now is doctors. We hire everything else under the sun, right? We hire CEO, we hire lots of CEOs, we hire so many developers and salespeople. It's really our foray, marketers, and then all the way down to the front, someone answering the phone at the front line, and everyone, it gets treated the same. We have kind of the same principles all across the way. And if you want them here, if you want them in, I don't care if you want them here or you want them in the Philippines, it doesn't matter to us. We have recruiters in 12 different countries, in basically every continent. And so we can find the talent you need. So finding talent should no longer be your issue. We've made a solution that you can afford it, and that you can afford, any business can afford, and, to help you grow.
Fantastic. So for everyone out there, you've got your startup, you got your organization, you're struggling to find the right talent fit, and you want to be creative. ISO Talent, it's isotalent.com is the website where you can go, you can reach out. And you know what I love? I love organizations that want to earn your business every day, every month, and not feel like, oh, I've got you locked in and you can't go anywhere, you're handcuffed. And that's a sign of an organization that knows that they're going to deliver value like ISO Talent does. And so anybody that hasn't moved to that model probably is more bureaucratic, not thinking with the long term in mind. And I think that's just super valuable, something that everybody should keep in mind as they're looking to place their talent and build their team. Last word, Rob. Tell us, when as you've been building your team now at ISO Talent, what were some of the values and principles and culture that you wanted to have build out with your own team that everybody listening can kind of take and, oh, that makes sense. I should probably think about that with my own organization.
Like I said, there's two things that I look for. Obviously, we're going to identify, regardless of the positions, like if there's weak spots that you're going to identify from a technical perspective, meaning, it doesn't matter if you're hiring for marketing or sales, whatever it may be. The thing that I looked for is I wanted ownership, right? We were handing out, and we hand out ownership. It doesn't matter what the level it is at the company. So I wanted people to act like owners. So I'm okay with people stepping on toes. if I'm going to build something of value for me and my family, then that's the goal, right? At the end of the day, I'm building something for me and my family.
Amen.
That I look at it as a failure if I go and have this major success and the people that help me get there don't enjoy the success with me, right? And so we hand out equity the way that and significant equity, like, my goal is like, I want to make several millionaires, as we exit. I want people, in order to do that, you have to have people take true ownership in the process. And so it's really, we pass on a lot of really, really talented people because I just didn't feel like they were going to take the ownership they need. And we took chances on maybe some fresh faces because I thought they just had that hunger in taking an ownership in the process. And like everything, like people make mistakes. We haven't been 100% even our own hires, but as you go through that, boy, we got a good crew here. Oh man, we've got winners here, and they just own the process as if they were the founders themselves. And I love that about this group.
Dang, what an awesome takeaway. Hire people that take ownership and then let them have the opportunity to earn, those shares, that equity, so that they're working for something greater, than just today, than just tomorrow, but actually working towards something of value where everybody wins and loses together. Super powerful. It reminds me of an interview I was watching where, the guy with the $100 million business is interviewing the billionaire, and he's like, hey, what's the difference between growing from 100 million to $1 billion? And the answer was more people who have more autonomy to own something and build it and sharing the rewards of building it with equity at the end of the day. That was what he said the difference was between when he had a $100 million business and $1 billion business. And that's exactly what you've just confirmed for us today. Robb, thank you so much for being a guest on the podcast. So much value. Again, everybody, you're looking to build the right team, go to ISO Talent. That's isotalent.com. And Robb, thanks for being a guest on the show.
Appreciate it, Lou.
Are you looking for more seven-figure secrets, content, or even how you can launch your own recession-proof business? Then check out sevenfigures.com. That's the digit 7, FIGURES.com, where we share more videos, stories, strategies, funding solutions, entrepreneurial education, and even the secret business type that's recession-proof. Thank you for listening, and if you're finding value in our podcast, please give us a 5-star and invite others to join the club.